Hello, my name is Kelly Klein. I'm the head coach at Intimo Coaching. And today I wanted to talk a little bit about religious trauma. I offer coaching specifically designed for people with religious or cultural trauma that has embedded a sense of shame around sexuality and the body so that people can reclaim their lives, especially their intimate lives. So I just wanted to share a little bit about this in case this is something that you are experiencing or have experienced in your life. Okay. First, I would like to start with a grounding exercise, and this is called ventral vagal breathing. It is designed to help your body know that all is well and get to a resting state where you feel at peace, where you feel maybe like socializing or just at least comfortable in your body. So to do this, it's very simple. We're just going to breathe in through the nose and then breathe twice as long out through the mouth. So I'm going to guide you through this. First, I just want you to close your eyes if it's safe for you to do so. And first, feel into the bottoms of your feet, or if you're sitting, maybe the chair underneath of you, wherever your body is in connection with the ground underneath of you. Just feel that. Feel your weight dropping down. Maybe soften the body a bit more into that support. Now we'll start with the breath. So again, in through the nose and twice as long out through the mouth. So exhale all the air out wherever you are in your cycle. Deep breath in through the nose. Hold for a second, and then twice as long out the mouth. Relaxing your body as you exhale. Two more just like that. Last one. Might even smile as you inhale. Exhale through the mouth. Free to make sound or sigh. Let's just do one more. Beautiful. So if this presentation isn't going to get into details, it shouldn't be, it's designed to not be triggering, but talking about these things can still bring up stuff. So if you ever feel dysregulated, feel free to pause this video and take a few of these breaths and come back when you're ready. And throughout your life, whenever you're feeling this is a good time. Good exercise to do. So first, what is religious trauma? So religious trauma is the physical, emotional, or psychological response to religious beliefs, practices, or structures that overwhelm an individual's ability to cope and return to a sense of safety. So this is the state in the body, and I'll talk about this a little bit more later. But basically, the trauma can come from anywhere. So it might not be a one big event, although it could be. But especially with religion, it tends to be over time. So learning about things like hell and sin and these other very harsh teachings that many religions have can create trauma in and of itself. And then that becomes internalized. Oh, so it's here. Oh. So these very harsh teachings that sometimes come in religious contexts can get internalized into the body. So a sense, especially if someone has been in a religion since they were very young, so they take in all of this knowledge like a sponge, all of these beliefs, and they become very ingrained in the actual nervous system of the body. So even when beliefs change, as I'll talk about later, even as maybe someone changes their understanding or beliefs about religion or spirituality, the trauma can still live in the body. And again, this can happen over time through kind of chronic traumatic experiences or large events. And adverse religious experiences are any experience of a religious belief, practice, or structure that undermines an individual's sense of safety or autonomy and or negatively impacts their physical, social, emotional, relational, or psychological well-being. So what one person experiences as an adverse religious experience might not be adverse for someone else. Everybody's different. How we respond to things are different. Our nervous systems are wired differently. So what could actually feel very healing for one person might feel traumatic for another. So I would love for you to just take a moment and think about, how has religious or cultural trauma impacted you and your experience? If you think of something that you'd like to share, I am open on Instagram, or you can reach out to me through my website. I would love to understand and empathize and learn more about what your experience has been. So this is a chart that comes from the Religious Trauma Institute, and it is the Religious Power and Control Wheel. So this wheel shows all the different ways, not all the different ways, but many of the different ways that religious power and control can create adverse religious experiences and maybe even trauma. So I'll just read these briefly. I'm not going to get too into them. They're pretty self-explanatory, but one is isolation. So cutting people off from anybody outside of the religion or the community that they're in. Another is minimizing, denying, or blaming, making someone wrong, saying that the abuse didn't happen, denying the severity, blaming the victim for something that happened, really turning it back on the person that experienced the abuse. There's also emotional abuse. It might be calling someone a sinner, or just taking away the ability to really trust yourself. It might be putting someone down or saying that they aren't worthy of God's love, something like that. Spiritual abuse is when you're required to submit to a certain way of believing. And again, this takes away one's autonomy to think for themselves. So this is when, hey, I have all the answers. When the church or another religious organization says, I have all the answers, you have to follow it this way, otherwise you're wrong. There's also threats, accusations, and intimidations. If you leave the church, they might threaten to ruin your life in some way, or that you'll lose your community. And those might be really real threats, or that you're going to go to hell. There's all sorts of ways that religious institutions threat, accuse, and intimidate. There's also economic control. So requiring people to pay a lot of money, to give a lot of money that they have to the church, or otherwise controlling how they use their finances, especially in like cult-like situations. Sexuality and gender defining. So this might be, there's a religion saying there's a particular way that you need to be, otherwise you're wrong. This is a particular way you need to have sex, a particular way you need to be your gender. And they kind of define that for the individual, rather than letting them express as they want to express, rather than letting them listen to themselves. And this is really the meat of where I come in as an intimacy coach, and I'll talk about that a little bit later. And the main one is the loss of autonomy. So overall, there's this sense of handing over control to the religious organization. And and losing one's sense of self, one's ability to think, being taught how to think rather than what to think rather than how to think. So this is overarching what all of these different modes of abuse can do. They can take away someone's sense of autonomy. So the dynamics of a system of power and control are often very confusing and sometimes very subtle. They might be saying, I love you, and this is all in God's love, and then be exerting very subtle modes of control. And each individual dynamic in and of itself might not feel abusive or controlling or that bad. However, when these are combined with and added to one another, we see that there's a system that's designed to and intended to exert power and control over others with rules, requirements, punishments, and consequences for not adhering perfectly to these specific requirements. A system of power and control requires that individual to believe, think, and act on a set of rules and dynamics to be a part of the group, which is really what they want, is to feel part of a group and to feel God's love. Spoiler alert, all of that is available to you outside of religious contexts or within healthy religious contexts. Failure to adhere to this can result in severe consequence, including being excommunicated from the group. So the stakes are very high. It's not just when there is a system of power and control, especially in a religious context, which can be so embedded with one's family, life, community, the threat of losing that, in addition to losing one's connection to God, can feel overwhelming and can be very disempowering. So why do people stay in abusive situations? One is brainwashing or indoctrination, being taught what to think rather than how to think. And this is internalized, so it can be very hard to even think outside of the system that has been imposed. Another is hope, dreams, and possibilities. Maybe the sense that it'll get better, or if I stay, I'll gain favor with the people in power, and maybe I'll get that power sometime too, or God will love me more if I endure this. There's also denial, fear, and terror. People are, as I kind of said before, people are very afraid of the negative consequences. And sometimes they don't even know how to live another way or live outside of the context that they are used to. So there can just be a very real terror of what would it mean to lose this? What would it mean to step out of this? And then so people stay. People might also feel that they've given the people in authority or God themselves know what's best for them, and that they should just endure the abuse that they're feeling or these adverse experiences because it's what's best for them. Also, family, friends, and relationships. So oftentimes especially when people grow up in these contexts or have spent a lot of time in them, there's a very real sense of community and connection and a very real threat that they might lose that if they leave. They also oftentimes just want love. They love their church. They want God to love them. They love God. So there's a sense of, if I leave, then I'm going to be leaving the ones I love. It's also overall, especially in the US context, the very positive view of religion that we have in our culture. So it's very hard for people to believe. Sometimes people just won't believe that there's abuse happening in a church. Also, religion is so pervasive that there might be this sense of, even if I leave, it's still going to be there. There's still going to be this control over how I live my life or what people think of me. So there can be a sense of hopelessness. What is trauma? So again, traumatic events and religious indoctrination doesn't necessarily cause trauma. Trauma, what we think of as the physiological response to an event that overwhelms the nervous system and takes away the individual's sense of autonomy and power. Another way to put this, the physical, emotional, or psychological response to religious beliefs, practices, or structures that overwhelmed the individual's ability to cope and to feel safe. So that would be specifically religious trauma. So it's really important to understand that trauma is a physiological response. It's something that happens in the body. It's not just in the mind. It's not just in the external situation. So even if we leave a traumatic situation, the trauma is still in the body. And just want to talk about what does it mean to have a sense of safety and individual autonomy. I've been talking about that a lot. When we feel safe and when we feel that we have our sense of autonomy, we can say no to things that we need to say no to take care of ourselves. We can push people away that we need to push away. We can maintain a sense of personal integrity and think for ourselves. And we can do what's necessary to feel safe in the world. Especially as adults, children need some help to feel safe in the world because they're literally dependent on people. But as adults, we have the ability to help ourselves feel safe. Oftentimes, this has been undermined by religious trauma or cultural indoctrination, but there's hope. There's ways to regain and reclaim the sense of autonomy. I'll get to that soon. So I want to talk specifically about religious trauma and sexuality because that's really my expertise. So many religions include some kind of doctrine around sexual purity, but whether that's no sex before marriage or teaching that sex is sinful or a specific religious organization exerting control over how their members can have sex with whom and when. There's all sorts of ways that religion tries to shape the sexuality of the people involved. So even after someone has left a religious context and changed their beliefs about sexuality, the imprinting still lives in the body. And with something that's so connected to our body and feeling safe in our body, sexuality, for it to function correctly and be consensual and all these things, we need to be able to feel safe and connected to our own bodily experience. So especially with sex, having that trauma in the body can impede your sexual expression and experience. It can, even if you're still in the church and still believe and you're married and you've done everything right, sometimes it can be difficult for people to have a pleasurable sex because they've spent so many years in the belief of sex is sinful. So even when it's approved by the church, they still might have a hard time with it. So through therapy and through somatic intimacy coaching, like what we offer here at Intimo Coaching, these patterns can be rewired. There is hope. There is a way to reclaim your sexual agency, your sense of freedom and fun, as well as your sense of connection to your body. So how do we recover from trauma? We need to not only leave the abusive situation, that's the first step, but not only that, we have to support the nervous system to heal the physiological wiring that was created by trauma. We need to rewire the brain and nervous system. We need to attune to the body and listen deeply and do real work at the level of the body feeling safe. Part of this is creating situations that help us feel powerful. So this can happen I do this with my clients in the work that I do. We create scenarios, we do kind of role play, skit type things, rituals and ceremonies that help the client feel their sense of power again, help them reclaim their autonomy. This can be in very small and big ways, even from choosing where to sit in a room or who's going to speak first or something like that. So all of these little things can help someone reclaim their sense of autonomy and come back to themselves. It's important to know we can't think our way out of trauma. We can't simply say, oh, okay, that happened. I understand what happened. I understand its impacts on me. So I'm free of it, right? It lives in the body. So it really needs to be healed through our physiology and our nervous system, through things that activate a felt sense, image, experience, movement, bodily movement can be very healing in this way because it speaks to the part of the brain, the limbic system, where this trauma is living, and it helps to undo and rewrite some of these patterns. So just a little bit about polyvagal theory and the different bodily states. We have what's called a safe and social state, which is when our parasympathetic nervous system is activated. And that's that breath that I did at the beginning. That can help you get to a safe and social state. Breathing in through the nose, twice as long out through the mouth. Helps the body realize, okay, all is well. I don't need to run from the tiger. I am safe. It's safe to be connected here. And this can be experienced inside of religion. It's oftentimes part of why people stay, is there's this beautiful experience of connection and safety and being with others and feeling God's love. And so that can happen even as abusive situations are happening. I feel it's important just to note here that I don't believe that all religious contexts are abusive, and there are spiritual and religious communities that do value individual autonomy and can promote this safe and social state. more often without the trauma. Then we have fight or flight, which is the sympathetic nervous system. So this can occur in the body even when we're taught about hell or sin, there can be this feeling of, oh God, I gotta get away. And there's also freeze or fawn, which is when the nervous system is even more overwhelmed. It's when it wants to run, it wants to fight, but it actually doesn't feel safe to do that. So we either freeze or we fawn, which means we're appeasing the threat, doing what they say, hoping that the threat will go away. So this can happen when it feels too threatening to fight, and it can create a feeling of literal stuckness in the body, like you're pushing on the gas and the accelerator at the same time in a car. So we can heal trauma by helping return the body to the safe and social state and supporting the nervous system and feeling safe in the world. And a lot of this happens by really learning to listen to our bodies closely. And that's what I love helping my clients do, is understand what information they're getting through their bodies and how they can listen to that wisdom more carefully, especially after being indoctrinated into a religious context where you've learned to not listen to yourself and listen to what the authority says. That this process of being able to listen to your own body and your own wisdom can be revolutionary and revelatory for people, especially after experiences like this. And I just want to say too that we don't have to grow up in a severely religious context to get this kind of trauma. It might happen from our family, our culture. There's all sorts of ways in which we are encouraged to kind of hand off our authority, whether it's to a teacher, to a pastor, to our boss, that it's normal, it's normalized within us to not listen to our own bodily wisdom and to appeal instead to an authority. So one of my greatest visions for this world and greatest missions with my life in this world is to help people return to their own bodily authority and sense of personal autonomy. So let's talk a little bit about how Intimo coaching might support you if you are on a journey like this, or simply if you have trauma from some other kinds of experiences from your family, really anything that's getting in the way of you living your best, most fulfilling, intimate life. I would love to help you release shame and empower your passion. So Intimo coaching, I offer one-on-one coaching. This is a 3-month personalized program. We start with 3 months. Most of my clients go for at least 6 or more. But we start with 3 to see just as an initial commitment. And these are 3 60 to 75-minute sessions. So there'll be 9 over the course of 3 months. We usually do 3 weeks on and 1 week off. So just to give some time to digest and integrate what you've learned and kind of take a pause before coming back. During this time, I'm available for support between sessions via voice memos or text. And I also have lots of easy to digest informational materials and home play practices that I will empower you with along the way. Here's a general outline of what a program might look like. And as I said, it is very personalized to where someone is in their journey and where they want to go. So this might shift a little bit for you. But first we go into the past. We look at the personal history. What kinds of experiences has somebody had? What has impacted their journey? What's impacted your journey? Then we go into start to learn embodiment practices and visioning of the future. Where do I want to be? And how can I get there? Then there's a process of bodily and sexual reclamation. And this is a very powerful ceremony. This is a process of signaling to your own nervous system and your own limbic system that I am in control now. I'm calling back my power from anywhere that I've given it away, and I am listening to my body. Then we spend a session, at least one, usually this goes into many of the sessions after this, talking about the inner aspects, like and by that I mean the different parts of us that are within us. We have not only every age that we've ever been living in our bodies still, but we also have different archetypes, different modes of being, For example, you might have an inner nurturer or an inner field researcher or an inner trickster or a warrior or a higher self, a spiritual guide. So we take some time to start creating an outline or a list of who do I have within me, and who might I want to scaffold, to create an imprint of within me to help me. Maybe I have never really nurtured myself and my nurture is either non-existent or very weak. So we might do some practices to help strengthen and tap into your inner nurturer, the one that can give unconditional love to others, but maybe hasn't experienced giving that to them, to yourself. Then we talk about boundaries, how to recognize them, how to talk about them, how to advocate for them, how to assert them, as well as some exploration of what your personal boundaries might be. And then we talk about desires, and this is a fun one. So this is a time to explore, what really turns you on, what excites you, what are your passions, whether it's sexually or other places, like what is your desire for your life and for the world. And then the last 3 sessions are generally highly individualized personal journeys. If we have the ability to work in person, sometimes we will do that. Otherwise, we can do that all over Zoom. But these personal journeys can vary a lot depending on what's happened in the first 6 sessions and where you want to go. So here are the investment options. The first option is to make a very easy weekly payment of $144 USD a week for 12 weeks. And then the other option, you get a little discount. If you pay in full, you get $288 off, and you pay $1,444 one time. And that's for the full 3 months. Thank you so much for taking this time to be with me today and to explore religious trauma and adverse religious experiences. If you or somebody you know has experienced something like this and is seeking support, please reach out. There is support available. It is possible to reclaim your life, to reclaim your body, and you don't even need to leave the religion. There's ways to maintain your connection to the religion and still keep yourself safe and heal any trauma that you've already experienced. So I'd love to support you, and I look forward to hearing from you. See you next time.